Hello and welcome to Glorious Purpose, the Loki Season 2 reaction show. This is episode 4. I'm sure you've been keeping up with us and the show for all the other episodes. If not, you can catch them in the description below. We've had 3 really good episodes so far. Liz, how are you?
Oh, swell.
Are you excited about this week's episode?
I sure am.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of shocking moments in this
lot
episode.
of shocking moments. Quite literally from almost from beginning to end on this episode. If you haven't been keeping up, you can follow us at the Comic Crush and on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, and at the Comic Crush Blue Sky whatever it is, and on Facebook, and just kind of keep up with. We post the episodes weekly. We've got 2 more to go. This one is going out slightly earlier than all the others. I like from the beginning. It was quite. I mean, it was a calm episode at the beginning, and it's weird with the show because it's kind of keeping up a sense of urgency, but also kind of meandering in quite odd little directions. And I kind of liked that sort of brief detour. I mean, first of all, we pick up with Ravonna and Miss Minutes, and we go into like the kind of timeline itself, which I thought was a really nice visual effect. I quite like that.
Yeah, during the credits, yeah, that was really cool.
And we're at the end of time with Ravonna and Miss Minutes. Miss Minutes is proving to be more and more psychotic.
Yeah, the real Machiavellian force.
Yeah. Which does make you wonder about what's really been kind of going on. I don't think there's a kind of like a comics equivalent for this, really.
Yeah, no, not, like, I mean, yeah, I can't think of anything directly.
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting character, and it's interesting to kind of seemingly push her to the front now as the bad guy, all because she's got this kind of weird obsession for He Who Remains. And I just don't know where they're going with that.
Right. I wonder if we'll see Miss Minutes again, after this episode.
Do you, like, just as a sort of side thought, do you think it will be a bit of a cop-out to have her be the ultimate bad guy?
I don't know that it would be a cop-out, because she is an invention of He Who Remains, and therefore an extension of him.
But definitely going off in her own...
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the whole concept of free will and everything. She's been given sentience and, the ability to write her own programming. And so therefore she kind of has, in essence, free will to an extent. She can't make herself a body, which is what she really wants. But
so she has no variant, unlike the others. She can't find a variation of herself. I was expecting, as I said last week, I was expecting something different out of the reveal, like the big secret she had on Ravonna. I didn't know it was going to be that. Like, I genuinely thought, they're gonna push her forward as some sort of Kang variant, but instead it's that she was kind of leading the army during the Time War and then had her memory wiped.
Right, and it looks as though she and He Who Remains were like almost partners, and thought she was going to be leading with him, like you see in the little scene that Miss Minutes sort of recreates, that there are 2 chairs there in the room, like leading you to believe that the 2 of them have kind of been leading together.
And in that scene, they're just about to kind of go off and run the TVA together, which at least is the plan that he's given her before he's kind of wipe all the memories. And then Miss Minutes kind of says, look, we didn't need him. We never did. As you were saying, the kind of Machiavellian aspects are coming more to the fore now. And then we meet Victor Timely again in the TVA, where he's kind of walking around and seeing for the first time his own face on things, and seeing the kind of representations of the Time War, things that he of course hasn't experienced and now may never experience. But he's quickly sequestered into this kind of struggle to fix the loom. But as he says, everybody wants him. Sylvie wants him to kill him. Ravonna wants him for, I guess, some unknown purpose, but we assume to kind of restart the TVA as it were, or as it was. Loki and Mobius want him, and he doesn't really have a say in that. He's got no free will, or at least they're kind of seeking not to rob him of his free will, but to kind of at least temporarily use him. Yeah. And he is just a tool for other people's desires at that point. But Mobius kind of sees where he's coming from, and he's into that. And they take him down to meet OB. Now, I loved that scene because, just for one thing, you get more OB and more of the other guy as well. I can't remember. I've forgotten his name now. Is it
Casey?
Casey, yes. And those two are really great together. But also you get this admission that all of Victor's work is based on OB's writing. And OB says that he got all his inspiration from a scientist called Victor Timely. I love that moment.
Yeah, so what's what came first, chicken or the egg? It's it's that,
like a snake eating its own tail, as OB points out,
which is the Ouroboros. But yeah, it looks as though those ideas really could be put down to the two of them together, and so then seeing them work together was really nice.
But also,
and their admiration for one another.
Does the fact that Ouroboros' name is Ouroboros, and the fact that he points out that this is like a snake eating itself, does that kind of lead you to believe that he is at least consciously aware that they would work together at some point? That perhaps he is the kind of architect of it all? I mean, how did that make you? What did you think?
I mean, I think that just fuels speculations that have been going around, like, rumblings on the internet. Whether, his reaction at meeting Timely seemed genuine, in
Absolutely.
his surprise that this could be the guy he got his ideas from.
Is it that it's just happening at a different moment than he expected?
It's possible. I mean, it really depends on, how much you want to extrapolate about OB and, who he really is and what his intentions might be.
I mean, I don't know what to think, Nate, just yet. But also, like, it is like, could it be that the rogue element here is Loki or Sylvie, and that's kind of adjusting the timeline as set, at least for OB? Because remember, OB works behind the scenes. Is there another timeline behind the sacred timeline? Because we're told no one gets older in the TVA. Okay, so there's no timeline effectively, but is there?
Also, right, and we're reminded of that, I think, during the episode, that time doesn't move in the TVA. I think it's Sylvie who points it out.
But also, an interesting thing I was reading, OB in earlier scenes apparently doesn't have glasses. So in the flashback scenes from the earlier episodes, doesn't have glasses, but in the late scenes he does, which implies that he's getting older. So is there?
Right. Okay. Or is he traveling outside of his own timeline? You know, is he leaving the TVA and coming back, and therefore aging? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, lots of interesting stuff. But anyway, it becomes critical that they've got to kind of invent or build something to to kind of make the loom work again.
Yeah, I liked this scene with the like OB's like crude model.
It's better than any model you've ever seen, right?
Well, it's which again is a direct reference to Back to the Future and Doc Brown building the crude model, and it's like obviously like perfect and beautiful, so it was very funny.
I found I loved, there were so many good little Kahekwan moments there. Like, I didn't have time to make figures for us all, was a great one. And if I'd known I was going to meet Victor Timely, I would have tried to finish it. It's only had one coat of paint, and
I feel very embarrassed. It's not to scale is exactly what Dr.
And I love says. There's also a sign that says on the thing, not to scale. Like, I thought that was great.
It was.
Like, I don't know if these things are being kind of invented on the spot. I don't know how much improvisation is going on. And by improvisation, I mean, they get a first version of the script and then they add in things to be kind of, put into the script later. I love the little action figure. I hope they're going to make these and put them out. I think they'd be a nice addition to the sort of
it would
Marvel
be great.
collectibles. I'm very interested, Liz. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, so I'm very interested. Like, does that design of the device that Victor adds to the mix, does that ring any bells for you? Because for me, it looked just like, when I first saw it in episode 3, I was like, oh, hold on. Now, apparently it is like another device in the MCU, but the thing that it reminded me of most was the Rainbow Bridge from Thor.
Oh, when you go through like that during the opening credits scene, when you're going through the, the timeline, through, essentially the loom, that really reminded me of the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah. But also when you reach Asgard, there's that great big domed area.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
I forget his name now.
Heimdall,
yes, thank you. He's kind of at and guarding the sort of, and he kind of sees all, and it does make you wonder, could he have seen outside of time? And there's all these kind of questions that kind of pop up in your head as you watch. But I guess that's kind of the Marvel forte, isn't it? It's kind of make you ask a bunch of questions that we're not necessarily going to answer.
Right.
But as long as you're asking them, that's the important thing. I think it's always important for art to raise questions. I don't always think it should answer them, but I do think it's important that art does raise questions. But it's an odd thing because it's the art asking questions about itself, about its own kind of narrative constraints and things. So I kind of, from one aspect, it's been a much more fascinating show than any of the others. We also have this kind of side story going on where B5 or B15 wants to convince
Docs
to kind of join in and help protect the TVA, this new TVA, whatever that's going to be. Which is a kind of, I found that quite interesting because to me, all of that is saying that she's going to end up leading the TVA in whatever form it ends up in. I've got a feeling she's going to end up running the TVA.
Yeah, I think that would actually be, really fitting if that's the way things turn out. Even Docs has to sort of acknowledge that she has integrity and she believes she's doing the right thing.
Completely. But you have these kind of childish, selfish desires of Brad, of X5, threatening to kind of undo all that. And it's interesting because that sort of mirrors the relationship between Loki and Sylvie, but just on a grander scale. I've kind of found that quite fun, and it's quite fascinating to watch that as a kind of side story that echoes the main story. I think that's quite clever writing, and we're also kind of having another spanner thrown into the works by Renslayer, who now kind of pops up. Now, I thought that they had been marooned at the end of time.
Yes. Now, see, there were a couple things in this episode where it was like, it worked for just moving the story forward, but it did make it mystifying as to why Sylvie would punish Renslayer by throwing her into the end of time, but not bothering to check whether she had, a temp pad with her.
Yeah.
And because, therefore she's really just letting Renslayer continue her plans.
Yeah. It's entirely pointless. It makes all
you don't want to think that Sylvie would be that stupid.
No, which does also makes me wonder about Sylvie's motivations. Although, as we see in this episode, she's struggling. She's really struggling with the idea that she's kind of quite happy to let all this burn.
I enjoyed the conversation between her and Loki.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the first times we were really seeing them have, an interaction that isn't just completely antagonistic.
Yeah, it is. And also showed a much more compassionate Loki, I thought.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. But that kind of raises questions for a bit later, which, I'm sure we'll get to. But before we get to that, we do have Renslayer and Miss Minutes arriving in the prison cell where all the
rogue.
previous rogue TVA agents are, and they're having the debate about among themselves: should they help B-15 or should they kind of revolt? And again, Brad's selfish desires. X5 wants to go back to his little movie star life. And he's questioned, was it really that good? He obviously thinks so, because he's willing to see everyone die. Now, what was interesting was the fact that Miss Minutes, clearly homicidal.
Oh, yeah, she's like having the time of her life. She's got this, she's jumping up and down. She's got a big smile on her face. She's loving watching, Yeah,
no discussion. I just love the fact that she zips into the machine, flicks it on, and then she's like, yeah, we're good to go. They're just going to wipe them all out. A really horrible death for those guys.
Oh, yeah, this is gruesome.
And I love the fact that directorially, Benson and Moorhead chose to focus on X5's face throughout the entire thing, rather than kind of cutting away. You don't see it. You only see it.
How horrible it is.
And of course, it's the thing he was threatened with. So he really knows how horrible it is. I loved that. I thought that was great. Really, really great bit of direction. And also made it more kind of, just really kind of horrible.
Yeah.
They're all squeezed to death. And also, again, you only see reactions to to what's happened, because when B15 comes in later, you just see her face. You're not shown the after effects. You're just shown the reaction to it, which is a kind of nice metaphor for the TVA, because they're just a reactive agency. They just react to what is happening. They don't enact. They react to things.
And I understand that this moved very quickly for plot reasons, but do you think that Ravonna gave them much of a chance to make a decision? It's like, well, what was the point? What was the point of trying to rally them all up if you're going to kill them within the next 30 seconds?
Well, again, it makes me wonder if she really was going to kill them, because she could have just as easily taken X5 through a time, or whoever wanted to go through a time door.
Right.
And they could have gone. So that, I think that's all Miss Minutes.
Ravonna did not attempt to stop her, though.
No. But I wonder if she's just kind of blind with power. As Loki says, she wants the TVA. She's not interested in time. She's not interested in taking him somewhere else and whatever other kind of plan they might have going on. She wants the control of the TVA and therefore control of time. But does she? Ultimately, does Miss Minutes actually want control of the TVA?
Right. I mean, and at this point, Miss Minutes actually starts to infiltrate all the systems within the TVA.
And we're then now that I was thinking of you during this next sequence, because going back to our very first conversation, going back to the beginning, going back to our very first conversation about this show, we wind up back in the situation we found ourselves in episode 1,
right? Which I thought I sort of posited that would resolve with it in the last episode, but it actually resolves here in episode 4.
Now we did also chat about whether or not it would be Loki that prunes Loki, and it is.
Yeah. So
we see the whole sequence in the lift. Sylvie getting stuck constantly in the lift, getting it running again. She finds Loki, but the Loki she finds isn't the Loki that's running around the TVA trying to find Victor. It's the Loki from episode 1. Now, I don't quite know how that's happened. Is it because the timeline is collapsing then and there?
Well, it's because Loki was time slipping during episode 1,
right.
And he had accidentally time slipped himself into a point in the future, which we've now caught up to.
Now, do we think that him pruning himself was the only way for him to stop himself time slipping? Do we think that?
Yes,
he was right. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And of course, when he made this realization that okay, here we are, that's why he knew what to do. Because if he had been pruned, if he hadn't been pruned at that exact moment, then he would have continued time slipping. And I'm pretty sure at the time he may have died some horrible death, or Mobius would have too, because he was out on the bridge. And
but here's my issue with that, because weren't we told by OB that the only way to stop him time slipping was to put that machine into the bridge in episode 1?
Yes.
But that's not the thing that stops him time slipping. He stops himself from time slipping. And it goes back to the question that I asked in episode 1, which was the Loki that came crashing through the time bridge and caught Mobius the same Loki we saw running around? Yeah.
It was. I feel like this confirms it.
So, but it then makes me think, was the original problem with the time bridge really that serious?
Well,
I remember I did say the two machines they keep coming up with, they came up with 2 different devices and they look exactly the same that have got to be plugged in. So I think there's something there. I think that we are kind of going through our own sort of time loop with this.
Right.
And maybe OB is is running around outside the sun. I mean, it's utterly.
Speaking of
please go for
that,
it.
one of the mysteries in episode 1 was who was calling on the phone, that which is what attracted Loki's attention to the elevator in the first place. And as it turns out, it is OB.
With an entirely pointless digression of like what's taking
right. So that's another mystery solved. A
non-mystery, as it turns out.
Right.
But I like the fact that they're doing it. They're creating these sort of throwaway moments.
If it is throwaway, I mean, maybe the fact that OB is the one who was calling, that maybe there is some intentional thing about that. Maybe OB did know to call at that time.
It could be. It could be. Also, what's interesting is we get this procedure happening where to shut down Miss Minutes and to stop her from interfering with them trying to repair the loom, they have to reboot the system, which apparently allows. Now, did I hear this right? That it allows magic to be used inside the
yes, because that's the whole thing about season 1 in particular. One of the only reason that they could control him is because his magic wouldn't work within the TVA. They have magic dampeners, and I loved the reaction between Loki and Sylvie. He was like, "Oh well, yes, but it would allow magic to be used in the TVA." And they both look at each other and they're both like, "Shut it down!" Like at the same time, because then they both know they can actually use their powers.
But also to what end? Because obviously we see a very immediate use of their magic, but do they both have things planned? Because obviously Loki. Again, we do seem to be getting a more compassionate Loki, but is that part of a sort of grand plan? Which I kind of you think you really want it to be? Am I right? You kind of want Loki to still have something up his sleeve?
Yeah, I do.
But I don't. I kind of actually really want to see him grow a bit and change a bit, and.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that I want the character that that I love from the comics and that I love from the movies, and one of the great things about him is that he does grow and he is sympathetic and that he does care about others, but he always defaults to self-preservation at all costs, and whatever is best for him, and he lies and he cheats and he's underhanded and and somehow he still manages often to do the right thing, and that's what I feel like has been missing a little bit. I want to see him do the right thing, but in a underhanded way where he'll never come out looking very good.
I mean, I kind of like you get a taste of both here, because in the earlier scene, which again was another comedy, a great comedy moment. Once you have Owen Wilson and Loki together, where you see where OB is explaining the plan and how you've got to move really fast to get down the bridge, and without missing a beat, he's just, Loki's really going to have to hoof it. It's like, what?
That was really funny. Oh yeah, and he's like, that doesn't even look like me. Yeah. And then they're arguing over who it looks like.
I loved it. Doesn't look like me. And Sylvie's just like, it looks like no one. It's quite. I loved it. Like, again, very skillful writing and great kind of comedy beats. But when we get to the end, we'll see a reverse of that. Now, for me, the real shocking moment here was that yes, they get Brad out of the room, and Sylvie takes over his mind. And he then comes in like it's the first time he's like, it's a weird kind of mood.
Because he is essentially enchanted by Sylvie, so it's as if Sylvie is talking to Ravonna, not X5. Okay. When he says like, I wasn't expecting to see you so soon. It's Sylvie saying that, not X5.
Yeah. And they come in and they get Victor out of the room. But then we see X5/Sylvie prune Ravonna. Now, I was really shocked at that. I didn't think they'd kill her off.
Well, I don't know that they have.
Yeah, there is an interesting thing we got to talk about in regards to the end of the episode and pruning and things like that. But I genuinely didn't expect that to happen to Ravonna. I mean, we get that lovely moment earlier where Victor's kind of obsessed with the cocoa, and he wants to know about this machine that will just make the hot chocolate for you. And one of the agents takes him and shows him that machine, and then they're having this lovely moment together, and he just gets
yeah, you finally see D90 sort of crack a smile, like, for the first time, and then he's pruned. But as sweet as that scene kind of was up until that point, it's another one that has me thinking, like, oh, is everybody really dumb? Like, why would you just let Victor Timely, the one who you're kind of like hell-bent to protect at all costs because he's the only one who can fix this thing, why would you let him wander off to the cocoa machine by himself?
Well, he didn't. They sent him off with an agent, and at that time they didn't know Ravonna was back in the mix, did they? They thought everything was locked down and okay. So there is that. But yeah, you're right. Like, you'd just be like, no, fuck the cocoa. You can have one after we say,
I'll go get you a cocoa. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's like that bit in the earlier scene where they're talking about inscribing each other's books, and Sylvie's just like, we can do this later. Let's save everything now. And of course, it's interesting to see Sylvie trying to save the TVA rather than destroy it suddenly,
right? Which goes against every fiber of her being, but at the same time, I think she at this point realizes that in order to save all those people on those branched timelines, she has to do it this way.
Now, coming to the end of the episode, when we get the kind of big scene here, and we're expecting big heroic moments here. Someone's got to put on the suit and get down the bridge really fast, and really get out there and put in the what is it called, the through multiplier, like
the through okay, let's call it the through multiplier, because I think that is at least mostly accurate. I didn't write it down,
so they've got to put this device. I don't think it matters. It's a MacGuffin. They've got to put this thing in the other thing to make it all work. Now, Victor volunteers to go
after Loki does.
Yeah, which is very interesting to see Loki. But I think Loki kind of knew, because he can use magic again. So there's nothing to say that he wouldn't survive. And what happens next goes back to Miss Minute's final moments. As she gets shut down, she says, Victor, let me tell you, and you think it's going to be this declaration of love. And it isn't. It's, you'll never be him. So you'll never be he who remains. And she's absolutely right, because he steps out onto the time door and gets smushed. Did that remind you of anything? Did that look familiar to you?
Oh, well, I mean, it's the, the black hole thing. Like, he got spaghettified.
Yeah, so it's like the from
which OB mentions earlier in the in the season. That also, he would turn to spaghetti.
Visually, doesn't it look like you remember in Multiverse of Madness when the Scarlet Witch takes apart Mr. Fantastic?
Yeah, that's true. And also, I think it happens in Ant-Man Quantumania.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it is something, so it was foreshadowed earlier in the season that that's what could happen to you. And it's still really shocking when it happens in this episode. Because I thought that the most gruesome scene was going to be that horrible scene in which the rogue TVA agents are crushed.
Yeah.
Whereas this was actually, it was pretty grim. It was like you can see his bones and stuff, and you just see him come apart. And you hear him scream, and it's, it is very, very shocking, because you think he's rushing out there and it's going to be this big heroic moment, and instead he's just decimated by the radiation.
But also, you're then left with the fact that it's it's kind of the end of the episode. Like
which
the
was
light comes
interesting.
towards them, and that's it. It's gonna end. That's time exploding. It's all over, ostensibly. I mean, obviously not. We've got 2 more episodes to go.
Right, but like what's interesting is that the conversation between Loki and Sylvie earlier in the episode, which I thought was one of the nicer moments in the episode. The content of that conversation was about hope, and at the end of the episode, it seems like there is no hope.
Yeah,
but is that sort of meant to set up, oh well, there can be hope against even these astronomical odds, and because the other thing that is worth noting is that episode 4 of season 1 had ended with Loki being pruned, which at the time you thought was death. You just thought that that he was killed, and you're like, how do you get out of this? But actually what ended up happening is that he winds up in a different place. So it again, it seemed like a hopeless situation that in fact turned out to be a change of venue and a change of opportunity, and not what you expected. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So are we now going to be in a situation like that? Because we know we've got 2 episodes left.
And there's definitely things we've seen in the trailers that haven't occurred yet. So we could end up somewhere. We could end up on a pruned timeline. I mean, maybe we're going to find out where all the pruned people go. When the loom exploded, the light was more or less the same as the light you get, sort of rainbow light that you get as people are pruned. So there is, it could be just like a giant mass pruning. Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff still to come, I'm sure. Whether or not we'll get all the answers that we want, I don't know. Maybe that'll happen. 2 more episodes to go.
Yeah, but this one was a really big episode. Like, it was.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that they put that this stuff is like, it's almost as big as, I would say, and maybe I'm being hyperbolic here, but it's almost as big as the snap. When you think about it, it's bigger because it really is the end of potentially everything. So right. Yeah, still lots to kind of see and do next week. I don't think I have anything else on this episode, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all kind of pretty straightforward action this week. There wasn't a lot of sort of Easter eggs and big character moments. Particularly, it was a lot of action and a lot of moving the story along, and it has been moving at a brisk pace.
And a lot of the scuttlebutt just reacting, because we're recording this a day earlier than we normally would. We would normally record on a Saturday and put it out then, but we're recording on a Friday. A lot of the scuttlebutt on the internet, the immediate reaction has not been this Easter egg, that Easter egg, this, that. It's been centered around this ending, centered around those moments. So yeah, fascinating stuff happening. I'm definitely looking forward to next week now. Like, I'm really kind of, I mean, I genuinely enjoyed every episode of this.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and what a cliffhanger, at this point in the season.
But it also then does fuel speculation that it is going to be one big reboot of the MCU. And hey, more power to them. If they can do that just using the TV shows, fantastic. I take my hat off to them for constantly being, at least trying stuff. I know it's been a very hit or miss phase.
And have you been paying attention to any of the stuff with like Daredevil, and they're talking about rethinking their TV model?
So things happening there. Yeah, so Daredevil is not like, it seems so bizarre now. It's like, well, we've got rid of the creators for this show, but we'll bring on another couple of creators, and we're rebooting the episodes we've shot. I don't fully understand it.
Well, it sounds like they had done, they had filmed quite a few episodes,
like 4
or 5 episodes. And because of the writer's strike, they kind of had to take pause. And in that time, they did some audience testing, and it wasn't very favorable. And so they decided to scrap it and just start fresh.
It seems strange. Like, I mean, putting in all that work, I hear that one of the problems was that he doesn't pop up in the suit until like episode 4.
And yeah,
I don't really see that as a problem though with an 18 episode run, which it was originally supposed to be. Now it seems like it's not going to be an 18 episode run. It will be something different. But there is also scuttlebutt saying that they are going to move to longer seasons. Now I don't really want to see. I sometimes like a short show.
Yeah, I mean, with Loki, it has worked well, even though, the plot kind of moves at this breakneck pace sometimes. It's enough that you're really satisfied with the story you get, and it doesn't drag. Where some of the longer form ones occasionally do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can still have things go wrong in 6 episode seasons in terms of the quality of holding a story throughout Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh my God, Paul! I knew you were going to say it. One of my absolute favorite shows.
But you're like, I just think you're wrong about the structure of that
No.
thing. I think it just does not hold.
Oh no! I think your opinion does not hold.
Guys at home, drop us a comment. If an episode goes by and I can't wind Liz up, is it really an episode? Did it really happen? But I think, at the same time, wasn't Hawkeye? How many episodes was that?
I think it was 6.
Was it?
I think Hawkeye was 6.
That was fun. And the first show out of the gate, in fact, One Division, that was 9 episodes, I want to say.
Shorter episodes though. 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And they were like 30-minute episodes.
So again, all kind of interesting stuff to come. You got anything else you want to talk to?
No, I think we've kind of covered it for this week's episode. I'm just dying to see the next one.
Speaking of the MCU timeline, though, there's a new book out from Marvel called the Marvel Cinematic Universe Official Timeline, which apparently does address. It's kind of presented by Miss Minutes, I believe, and it kind of does address some of the stuff from Spider-Man: Homecoming, which was always a kind of bugbear for the continuity fans about when Homecoming takes place, because originally it was 8 years after the Battle of New York, which kind of didn't necessarily make sense, I think, at the time. I mean, I never really noticed. I couldn't find myself having the energy to care, largely because I think that would have taken away at the time from my enjoyment of that film.
Right, but you do have to, acknowledge the fact that MCU fans are incredibly detail-oriented and nitpicky and want it to all make sense.
I think the continuity of the MCU becomes like that fandom Snyder cut, It's like, got to get it right. I don't think it matters that much, personally.
Right, but for your very persnickety fan, who really wants everything, to add up, this book does get into that and kind of gives you a reasonable explanation. Okay, we do have a copy of the book in the shop right now. It just came out this week, and it looks awesome. I haven't really had a chance to flip through it properly, but it's like a big, beautiful hardcover. And I'm kind of a sucker for those, like, you know, official timeline, you know, having everything laid out and yes, okay, I can see where this fits in and that fits in. And I'm like that. So
do you suppose the only reason they brought it out is because they're about to make it all redundant? Like, that would be the ultimate FU, wouldn't it?
I mean, it's the 616 timeline.
Yeah. But I'm, you know, I'll give it a look. If I can get hold of a copy, I will try and do a review on the Comic Crush. If you want more reviews, check out thecomiccrush.com. Do follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at the Comic Crush, Blue Sky at thecomiccrush.bsky.net, I think it is. You can follow my variant here at least C Jordan on Twitter and Insta, and on our website, LizCJordan.com. She's also appearing live on camera every week, every Wednesday for That's Entertainment in Massachusetts. If you're in Massachusetts, do visit. That's E. Liz does the Wednesday sort of comics catch up. Is there a sort of official name for that video?
There is no official name for the video, but
right.
It is
just
essentially
new comics.
It's the weekly comics. I go down the shelf. I talk about absolutely every single thing that comes out in a given week. Show you all the covers, give you any background info that I can.
I only watch it in retrospect, because obviously when it happens live is a completely different time for me.
Right.
So I only get to watch it in retrospect.
Yeah, I think in the UK it would be around sort of 3 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
I film it at, or, you know, between 10 and 11 usually, thereabouts, in the US, Eastern Standard Time. So if you are around at that time, then, you know, please do join me and say hi and watch it live. You can watch it live on Facebook.
Drop a comment, and also do drop a comment on our YouTube. We'd love to know your theories on what is happening with the MCU and what is happening with Loki season 2, or on anything comics related. Just drop it down in the little box down below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you comment, we will get back to you. You can also drop a comment on any of our socials. And yeah, as I said, we will come back and reply. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in on YouTube or Apple or Spotify today. Thank you to our sponsors, our patrons, I should say, rather. Yeah, all I've got to say now is we'll see you soon, guys. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye.